Hello. So this is Dr. David Boyson. I want to share with you some few thoughts on literature review. I think students really have some difficulties with literature review, and I want to approach this from a practical point of view rather than describing what literature review is. So I've posted one video on theoretical and empirical review. So just rehash some of these issues that I raised in that video. So literature review is a critical evaluation or assessment of the previous works that have been done by other authors. And it is sub-categorized into three main parts. We have the theoretical review, we have the empirical review, and we have the conceptual review. Today, we'll be talking about the conceptual review. I've already touched on the theoretical review and then the empirical review. Of course, theoretical reviews are the reviews of theories that set the theoretical boundaries of the study. For instance, this topic is examining the state of women issues in senior leadership. So you have two variables here, the state of women issues, then we have senior leadership. So these are the two main variables driving the study. So in theoretical review, we seek to look at where these variables are coming from. Women issues, where are they coming from? They should come from theories. Theories are a bunch of concepts, and they establish the relationship between these concepts. So it could be variables in there and the relationship between those variables. So in research, what we say is that you need to set the theoretical boundaries. So we know that the term women issue, or the concept women issue, was picked from this theory, because women issues may be described or defined differently in other theories. So you set the theoretical boundaries, and then from there you align the theory, or you align the topic to the theory. So we know that, okay, these concepts were picked from this theory. So we talked about that, and we also talked about the evidential, papers, like the empirical review. Another word for it is evidential, papers, where we talk about the various aspects that one needs to look at. First of all, we did indicate that you need to look at the purpose of the study. That's the first block. 4 things you need to look at: the purpose of the study. So this study, in the works of, let's say, David Boyson, 2005, they examine blah, blah, blah. And then you talk about the next thing, that is the methodology that was used. The study employed a particular methodology. And the third is the findings. So what are the findings? And that's key to empirical review, because these findings that you want to see whether there are gaps in there you want to fix. And even the methodology, sometimes there could be a methodological gap you want to fix. And then the last one is that, having looked at the purpose or the problem that is being investigated, having looked at the methodology and then the finding, the next thing is that, what is the purpose of that review? So we need to hear your voice, the reader's voice, the reviewer's voice. So how is this important to the study? You need to establish that. We've talked about that. So today we're going to talk about the conceptual review. So quickly, let's go to that aspect, conceptual review. All right. Right. Conceptual review. So, like I indicated earlier, concepts are a kind of a group of variables, okay, that has been tested and operationalized. And that is what a concept is. It could be one variable, it could be a group of variables. You have sub-variables that are tested and operationalized. So in a theory, you have concepts, and then the relationship between these concepts. So for a conceptual review, a typical example is what this guy did. And he was examining the state of women issues in senior leadership. So let's look at how he says it. But first of all, let's look at how the guy conceptualized, the framework. So that's what he was able to come up with. So in his mind, okay, in the mind of what the writer, he had a guy called Soa Hunch and then Hon, 2017, who came out with a certain model. And he decided to pick that same model, prune the model down, and then also pick some variables from some other theories to fit his study. Okay, and that's what the author did. So he picked the expectation state theory. He says it's in an independent variable, and in that he believes that standard of measurement, came from that theory. Of course, it came from that. And then there are mediating variables here, and these three mediating variables comes from the social identity theory: Old Boys Club, Queen Bee syndrome, and classification in group and out group. And then we have also human resource development that came from what? The standard of measurement, which is also based on the expectation state theory. So in this work, like I said, theories are a bunch of what? Concepts. These guys picked these variables from the theory. And that is why you see expectation theory here and social identity theory. Now, in research, when you do that, you'll be on your way to establish what we call construct validity. Okay, it starts from the alignment from the topic. The theoretical boundaries should be set very well. The problem that is being discussed should look at the specific areas in the topic that the problem wants to deal with. And then the objectives will set the targets that the problem wants to achieve. And that is turned into questions. So construct validity starts from how you do your alignment from the topic till you get to your conclusions and recommendation. Your recommendation. So that is about it. So let's look at this. So this is the model, and let's look at how these guys went about it. He gives a background. He said figure 1 below illustrates the conceptual framework adapted and modified from this guy. And it's important that he is able to give that kind of recognition to the person who so he sets he gives the opening to indicate that figure 1 below illustrates the framework that was adapted and modified from this author. And he goes on to say the women issues in senior leaders to identify and operationalize in the model. So we'll talk about how a model is operationalized, and he gives the background. Furthermore, mediation variable, just to describe what I told you. So when you read through, he tries to posit what he's doing in the context of what? The framework, all right? So for instance, let me take the opportunity to read. So women issues in senior leadership is identified and operationalized in the model as a dependent variable, endogenous variable. Furthermore, mediating variables, that's the classification, Old Boys Club, Queen Bee syndrome, and human resource development, which mediate between the independent and variable, that is the standard of measurement, are introduced and operationalized. The standard of measurement, which indirectly predict the dependent variable, is also defined and operationalized in the context of the study. It's just giving a highlight. And they said ultimately the researcher intends to test the direct and the mediating relationship between the standard of measurement and women in senior leadership. So let's go to, this is the model, and let's see how the conceptual review was done. Of course, remember, you label it and then you indicate the source. So the independent variable, let's look at it. So he begins to say that the measure of performance differs from one organization to the other. What is he doing? He's giving a broad, perspective of what he wants to talk about. And this is what we call in writing technical writing. It's introducing the issue. He didn't go straight. And he says that it is believed that most key performance indicators that KPIs used by human resource department are either influenced by gender biases, because research by whatever has shown that these instruments are developed by men, intended to be used for men at the disadvantage of women. Now he begins to now talk about what standard of measurement is. So he says The standard of measurement of evaluation is described by this guy, Beckley, okay, in 2008, as the tools and the instruments used by an organization to measure job performance of an employee. So what is this guy doing? Now he's defining standard of measurement by, this author, Beckley, by this author. So as tools, and he goes ahead to say that well-defined job description assists employees in knowing what is expected of them. It highlights the essential functions, tasks, and responsibility of the job, and emphasizes the general ideas of knowledge and skills required for the employee to be successful. Just explaining, what the author said from the researcher's perspective. And he said it is also important for employees to understand why the job exists, where it fits in the organization, and how the job's responsibility link to the organization and department objective. Now, this is the interesting part. He says that standard of measurement is operationalized in the context of this study as tools and instruments used by an organization to measure job performance of an employee, devoid of biases. All right. Now, this is where the author operationalizes. In fact, what he has done is to give it a working definition. So giving a variable a working definition is what we call operationalizing the variable in the conceptual framework. That is the meaning. So it goes ahead to say that the definition is adopted from Beckley 2018. We agree, because he gave the definition, he stated the definition by this author. But now he says that even though it has been adapted from this guy, what is happening? Adapted from Beckley 2018 and modified to remove the male dominance. So you see what he did? You cannot come up with your own definition because they don't know you. So he leveraged on Beckley 2018 and chopped off the male dominance. So he has his own definition for this study when it comes to standard of measurement. What it means is that if you are reading this work, anywhere you see standard of measurement, this is the definition. And it's important you need to understand this. So when we say you develop a conceptual framework, you come out with a concept. You are conceptualized. You think that there's a relationship between A and B. That is what you are thinking of. When you have been able to establish that, it is important. Of course, these things will come from the theory. It is important that you operationalize, give it a working definition. All right? So that's what we call, giving variables a working definition. So in conceptual framework or conceptual review, what do? We give all the variables we find in there, and that's what we have done. All these variables, if you are adapting the definition from somewhere, just tell us that this definition is adapted, not modified. As this author defined it, you have still operationalized it. And that's what we need you to do. So you don't leave anything out. If you draw a diagram and you don't describe it, if you don't explain it, we will understand. And most often than not, students are caught up doing these things, okay? Any diagram you put in your work, it's important that every variable in there is explained, all right? So this is just to rehash the issue on conceptual review. Remember, in conceptual review, you need to give a background of what you're doing, okay? And that goes into technical writing. You need to know how to do that. Give a background through the issue. Give a general broad issue about the variable you're talking about. Probably some contentious and contemporary issues about it. Bring it to bear. Give a definition, okay, with a known author, maybe a leading author about the variable, okay, how they define that variable. If you want to, borrow the definition from two authors, it is accepted. Sometimes You said this author defined this variable as this. The second author defined this variable as that. But what you are doing is that you are bringing the two together to come out with your own working definition so that tomorrow you also be quoted for that. Thank you so much for your time. We'll come along with another topic for discussion. Thank you so much.